You're probably same. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Happy Hour podcast. I am your host, Ricky Valero. On today's episode, we are going to continue to take a look at the madness that is free agency / trades, where apparently nothing is off the table. Over this past week, actually, Fox and I reconvened. I think it was Wednesday last week, and it was a crazy week leading into free agency, and this last week has not disappointed. With everybody's been traded. If you're a name, you've been traded. It's felt like we're watching fantasy football unfold this last week. It's really what I feel like. And some of these trades, I'm like, I would have been like veto. But as always, I'm joined by my partner here, Mr. Fox. How are you, bud?
I'm okay. I got traded, but I didn't pass the physical, so I had to stay.
Yeah, I made sure that you weren't allowed to leave. I had you traded. I had a good value in return, but I'm glad you didn't pass the physical. You went to Vegas to get the physical done. You went to join Devontae Adams and everybody else, and you managed to stay on. So we're happy to still have you here.
I'm just happy to still be here because midweek my Ryan Tannehill comparison to one of the Academy Award actresses almost ended the show.
Yeah, Josh McDaniels called me and said, I will give you a free case of Starbucks coffee for Matthew Fox. And I was like, I don't know. We'll see. The possibilities are endless. But we're here. We're excited. Obviously, I don't think Deshaun Watson was traded last week. Did we talk? We didn't talk about that, right?
No, we did.
Did we? We talked about it Wednesday? I don't remember. I don't remember when any of these trades went.
Maybe it's just such a long week. Maybe we just talked
about it. I don't think we did. I thought we talked about potential landing spots. I don't even know if we talked about it. But Watson's gone. Matt Ryan was gotten his feels because the Falcons, which I don't hate the deal for the Falcons because I feel like if you're going to rebuild with this new team, you got to do it now. Matt Ryan to the Colts, which is interesting. Marcus Mariota signs with the Falcons. And then, obviously the Devontae Adams situation. I think we did talk about that part. And then, of course, we had Tyreek Hill, which out of left field gets traded to the Dolphins. And that went from 0 to 100 real fast. Before we even saw it blink in front of our eyes and before I think anybody else could really invest into that market. And then, of course, you have Robert Woods getting traded to the Titans, which whatever. And then, of course, we still have a couple of open quarterbacks that are in this market that jobs are drying up really fast. So I don't know where to start, but what are your thoughts? First off, what are your thoughts about all these trades that are going down?
Well, I think for Watson, it wasn't just the trade, which was pretty big. It was giving him a new 5-year contract for $230 million, all of it guaranteed, which resets the market and was a curious move. Almost immediately, a second grand jury investigation was opened, which they also have declined to prosecute. So it looks like he really won't face criminal charges. But it has been... that one's been fascinating because it feels like it's been incredibly polarizing. I've seen a lot of people who are Cleveland Browns fans who are giving up on the team after this move. I don't think it's sat right with a lot of people that this has come down. I know there are a few, there's also a section of people that doesn't think, that thinks if he didn't get convicted of a crime, he hasn't done anything wrong. So it's been a very interesting and polarizing thing for a move that I don't know what it's going to be like on the field. Kevin Stefanski has typically been a very run-heavy offense. He's had Kirk Cousins when he had a couple of good receivers. I mean, he had Diggs and Thielen there. He had some good passing weapons. And you've always seen quarterbacks kind of settle into that upper tier quarterback 2, maybe touch low end quarterback 1. That's Deshaun Watson, when I think the hope for fantasy players had been seeing him as a potential top 5 option. I don't know that he is in this offense unless they're going to radically change the scheme, which doesn't seem like is in their plans since they invested in that line and Nick Chubb. They re-upped Dearness Johnson. They have Kareem Hunt. That'll be pretty interesting just to kind of see how that shakes out. The Matt Ryan trade was interesting too, only a third-round pick back, $40.5 million of dead cap. I think Atlanta's basically going to end up writing off kind of the 2022 season and look ahead to when they're free. Probably makes sense for them. Be curious to see if he's better than Carson Wentz and Phillip Rivers. It seems like once again they've taken a shot trying to fix things. The sneaky thing I've mentioned before about the Colts is they, when Andrew Luck retired, they probably were a quarterback away from competing for a Super Bowl. But I think we've seen their team ebb down a little bit. Pittman I still like. I love Jonathan Taylor. They have some holes to fill on their offensive line. They have a lot of questions about weapons. Right now it's Pittman and then Mo Alley-Cox. You hope Paris Campbell is able to catch the ball for the game and a half he's available this season. Nyheim Hines maybe lining up in the slot. I don't know what you think about that. The NFC South continues to be, or AFC South continues to be a little bit of a mystery to me. You're muted.
I love the move for the Colts because I think that I think Ryan is a step up from Wentz. I think Wentz I don't blame 100% on Wentz. I've talked about this on the show. I've said this once and I've said this 1,000 times that I believe that Frank Wright is part of the problem here. I do think that he's a lot of the problem, and because of that, I think that we're in a rocky situation. But I like the move by the Colts. I also like the move by the Falcons. I agree with you. It's time to rebuild. This franchise was never going to be able to take the next step without rebuilding here. And obviously, like Arthur Smith was just kind of a sitting duck in that transition, I think. Because I think with Brady coming back, a wide open division went from a very, closed division, especially since Watson didn't go to the Panthers. That didn't happen. The Saints brought back Winston, which is fine and dandy, but I don't think that's a game-changing move since they have so many other holes to fill in that offense and defense. But you're right. The big thing to look out for me is what the Colts do in this draft with wide receivers or what they sign. Could they reunite Ryan with Julio? What does that look like, even if they do? I don't hate that move, but they need some severe weapons for Matt Ryan, period. And they needed to make some moves in this draft. They got a pretty good O-line. They have a franchise-changing running back that in this league, the way we are, he might be out of the league in 3 years. You know what I mean? That's just the way this NFL works with these running backs. He might not be the same Jonathan Taylor he is in 3 years. So you need to take advantage of that window. The defense is solid. The division's winnable. It's 100% winnable. I understand the Robert Woods trade to the Titans as a good pickup. Austin Hooper being signed, it's a good pickup. But at the end of the day, you have Ryan Tannehill. And I understand apparently his mom, his brother, and his dad are on social media yelling at me. But at the end of the day, I just see this. You're talking about a Colts team that was 9-8. They could have won the division relatively easily, in my opinion. I understand the Titans finished 3 games up, but the Titans aren't going to be 12-5 next year. It's not going to happen. Their schedule's too hard. They play a first place schedule next year, and they have a rough schedule ahead of them. But this is going to be a 9-10 win division, and I think the Colts will be in that mix 100%. But I don't hate the trade for Mariota either, or the signing of Mariota for the Falcons. It sees what they have in Mariota. I still think they could easily bring in they'll probably draft a quarterback. Maybe they don't have the necessity of drafting one in round 1. I've seen a lot of different takes. In the near future, I'm going to dissect some of these quarterbacks in this upcoming draft class right here on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, where there's a couple of guys I really like in this draft. There's a lot of guys with upside, a lot of high upside players in this draft, a lot of high upside, but also guys that it's a boom or bust. There's a lot of boom or bust in this draft. There's can be guys that have high upside, but that downside looks terrifying. But another thing that I think that's interesting is what the Dolphins did to acquire Tyreek Hill. I love the move for the Dolphins 100%. I know they paid him a lot of money, and I know people are like, oh, my God, I can't believe it. Look, you got to make moves in the NFL, especially over this last week. I mean, when this is the big difference to me. When you're watching teams within your conference get better and better and better, the Raiders went out and make a splashy move. Like, the Broncos went out and made a splashy move. You're making moves in order to try to get better. You're talking about one division that might be solely responsible for 4 playoff spots, right? You know what I mean? You've got to make moves to be, and you look at Buffalo. Buffalo's gotten better this offseason. They still need to figure out the running back situation, I think, but Buffalo has gotten better this offseason with some big key moves. The thing is when you look around you and these teams are getting better and better, and people, I think, forget. I understand we have a coaching change that's a bit cautiously optimistic here, but we're looking at a Dolphins team that's 1 year removed from being 9-8. I think the X factor obviously is going to be Tua's development. I've never been a big Tua guy, but I mean, we're surrounding Tua with weapons. You know what I mean? Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on the field at the same time is downright scary. It's a scary offense. I do think and I don't think that it necessarily hinders fantasy value. I do think it's going to take a peg back for Tyreek. I think Tyreek may take a step back stat-wise, obviously. But you're talking about a team last year that, had, some viable weapons that made some plays. But outside of Waddle, you have Waddle, Gesicki, and Tyreek. I mean, you're talking about Devontae Parker, in my opinion, is a very good receiver, no longer having to be the one. I love it.
Well, see, Miami will be interesting. I would knock Hill back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. I don't know. We really have to see what Tua can do. I think the question is right now you have 2 guys to finish as wide receiver 1s last year, plus a tight end that was pretty close to the tight end 1 range. I don't think that they can keep 3 pass catchers in that level. I also, Cedric Wilson signed there. I know some people were excited about that, maybe him getting a shot at a bigger role. I think that's kind of dead in the water now. There are rumors they might try to trade Devontae Parker. That could help Wilson a little bit. But if Wilson and Parker are both there, low end wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, because I think what ends up happening is you probably have Waddle as a low end wide receiver 1 and Hill drop to a high end wide receiver 2. We saw even in Kansas City when he was alongside Kelsey and some of the other players and some of the things that they were doing, he was kind of a boom or bust guy. The other thing I'm thinking about is you're talking about an offense that is going to look very similar to what San Francisco did. And they've been loading up on running backs. They got Mostert, they got Chase Edmonds, they got Myles Gaskin. You may say none of those guys are impressive on their own, but as a collective group, if you think about that San Francisco style of offense, the question is going to be whether it's Hill or Waddle that ends up being the receiver that does some of those trick plays or some of those rushing work plays. If it ends up being Hill, that could boost his value up. We saw that work pretty well. Debo Samuel had a good receiving year, but he was also a killer on the ground, which has really vaulted his value up. As one of those receivers going to get that work. There are a lot of weapons, and now you're right. They've set Tua up pretty well to succeed. I think they still, they've been working on building that offensive line too. That's all great. I have seen some people that said the pressure is going to be on him because if you remember, they signed Teddy Bridgewater behind him, which I thought was an interesting signing considering there was a lot of talk about Bridgewater. He had a career year last year. He wasn't terrible. He's probably not got the ceiling of a lot of players, but he seemed like a guy who was tracking toward getting one of these kind of open shots at being a starter, and he elected to go to Miami. I think that puts a lot of pressure on Tua to perform, or else what's going to happen if he gets off to a slow start. We know his former coach was probably the agitator that was trying to look at upgrading over him. So I still liked Tua. I liked him coming out of college. I hope he gets his shot to succeed. I think they've been a decent team. They should be in the playoff hunt, but that AFC East is now getting surprisingly competitive. It's interesting. The Jets were in trying to make that move. They brought back Mr. Elite, Joe Flacco. I loved that Zach Wilson called him like his grandpa or dad or something on social media after they signed him, which was funny. But, with Elijah Moore there coming on, they still have Corey Davis, who's been an apt possession receiver. They went and got CJ Uzama to give them kind of a weapon at tight end. I love what they have in Michael Carter. I think they're a team with all of their draft picks that could potentially snag one of these other wide receivers to mix into the mix. Buffalo is still doing some big things. They've made improvements on defense. And then you have New England, who I've been kind of surprised by their offseason. Seemed like the one thing that they for sure had to do was get a wide receiver, and they have consistently not done it. Does that mean they're going to take one in the draft? That wide receiver class now is really going to get tested. I think in the first round, we could end up seeing a lot go because Green Bay still obviously has a massive opening. I would not say that signing MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster means that the Chiefs are done adding weapons. Maybe the Titans come out of the mix because they went and got Robert Woods. But there are a lot of teams, I think, on that backside. Tampa Bay, I wouldn't be surprised if they get one. It's going to be kind of interesting to see where all these things fall. And I know you referenced Atlanta. I actually think Atlanta will not take a quarterback in this draft. I think they're going to punt and look to go in 2023. I'm wondering if Houston does the same thing. And that, to me, I've noticed a lot of the revised mock drafts now for NFL drafts have one, maybe two quarterbacks in the first round. I actually think there could, outside of Carolina, which seems like they've committed that they don't want to go get one of these veterans and they're going to look to the draft. I'm not sure any of these teams feel a pressure to take a quarterback in the first round, which means you could see a lot of second and third round guys. Kind of reminds me of that Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock draft class where quarterbacks, other than Kyler Murray, who was obviously a clear number one, those quarterbacks all kind of slid around and it was more like value picks and where your franchise fell in love with somebody. And that's what we're going to see. I wouldn't be surprised if Malik Willis goes up early, maybe to Carolina, because they have no plan whatsoever. So that would be the perfect pick, picking a development player to go alongside to be developed with Sam Darnold. That would be the ultimate Carolina move. But what do you think about obviously Baker Mayfield and Jimmy Garoppolo are both sitting out there available for trade? I'm having trouble figuring out where I think they could potentially land.
Yeah, the door is shut on a lot of places. You know what I mean? The AFC East all have quarterbacks. The West obviously loaded for quarterbacks. The North, the Pittsburgh signed Trubisky. You know what I mean? I don't think they go down that route. The South does. Houston seems set going with Davis Mills.
In fact, Houston told teams when they wanted to trade for Watson, they wouldn't take a quarterback back. I know a few people have been like, why did they take Baker? They didn't want to get a quarterback. So either they're thinking about drafting or they're taking a development project.
Well, that too. And I think the thing with them is it decreases some of the other assets they could have acquired in that trade, I think. You know what I mean? Like they got a lot for him. I mean, we noticed today that yesterday it was there's an added 4th round pick that the Texans did receive. So they got 3 1s, 2 4s, and a 3. And that's a lot of picks. So the Texans are set up. Whether it's the back half of the draft or not, it's still a first-round pick. It's still 5 years that you've got control of a player that you're drafting. So the Texans have all of the right tools and pieces in order to move forward. So then, of course, we move over to the NFC. I mean, Dallas is set. Philadelphia, I don't think they make a move. Washington obviously made the move for Wentz. The interesting thing there is for Washington, would they have made that move for Wentz had they known Baker was available? Like, that's an interesting thing that I thought of right off the bat because, I mean, apples and oranges. Do the Giants bring in a quarterback to compete with Jones? I don't see that happening. And when I talk about these teams, none of these teams really show up for Jimmy G. I'm more thinking Baker Mayfield. Like, there's no starting jobs really available left. So does Jimmy G return to the 49ers? Do they let him stay around and start? Do they concede the fact that maybe Lance isn't ready, so they have the trigger ready? It's very interesting to watch this entire thing unfold because there's no jobs left for these guys. So Baker could go somewhere and sign as a backup for a year. I've seen a lot of different places where he could potentially go with a door opening up in the near future. But
the only one that they've rumored for Baker that I could possibly see is Seattle, although Seattle seems like they actually want to roll with Drew Lock, which is interesting. And, they're another team that could take a development. But if Jimmy stays in San Francisco, which almost feels like the most likely thing right now, what happens there? When we did our Dynasty consensus ranks, there was enough people that were high on Trey Lance that he actually pulled up into our top 10. I wasn't one of them. I'm not sold that he's ready or will be good. But, that could be even – we make jokes about the Jordan Love situation, but San Francisco traded 3 years worth of ones and moved up to get a guy. If he doesn't start for you for at least 2 years, that's a curious trade.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's definitely one of those things that I'm just not I'm not sure what's going on with it because we've seen some musical chairs that we did not expect to see unfold over this last week. You know what I mean? Whether it's quarterback, wide receiver, these trades are not ever made in the NFL. They're not. Like, this is a once a year type of thing where we see a big moving piece like this. Over this last week, we've seen some of the best players at their positions moving to other teams, and it's been crazy. So I do agree with you that it is a little washed up, and it'll be interesting to see what happens because it's interesting to think that a week ago today, had the Steelers known stuff was going to play out the way it did, would they have signed Trubisky as fast as they did? Had the Colts Colts known what was going to go on, would they have made a move a little bit faster? Like, there's so many different dynamics here. Obviously, we're speaking about coulda, shoulda, wouldas here, but it's interesting to see if we would have known this was going to play out the way it did, would teams have been a little bit more patient than jumping the gun? Mariota looks like he really made out of this entire situation because he waited, and of course the job opened with him and Arthur Smith. So that to me is
and Jameis Winston, who gets $28 million over.
Yeah, exactly. Winston's another one too that kind of, which I thought unless Watson went there, that was always going to be the option. But it's just still interesting to watch unfold. So with that being said, I will let you kick off. We had our consensus rankings for the wide receiver position. I'll let you touch the wide receiver, and then I'll do the tight end, and we'll kind of discuss both of them.
Yep. So wide receiver, and this published last Friday. Tight ends will publish this Friday. You may have already read it. We didn't have time with all the madness to touch on it on Wednesday. But number one in our consensus rank came out to be Justin Jefferson. We had a tie at number two was Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb. Both guys having good opportunities to be number ones in passing offenses this year. Number four, Debo Samuel. Number five, Cooper Kupp. I'll be curious to get your feelings on whether you would drop him a little. These votes came in pre-Allen Robinson signing. But number 6, A.J. Brown. 7, Devontae Adams. Number 8, and this is again before all this trade madness happened, is when we were putting these votes together, is Tyreek Hill. So that's another one that'll be interesting to see. And then we had a tie at 9 with Jalen Waddle and Deontay Johnson. So you've seen a lot of the guys in this top 10, which we did a couple of weeks ago, have seen their fortunes change at wide receiver, which would be interesting. For me, I probably would drop Hill out now. I am pretty neutral on the Adams move. I still think he's going to get a lot of volume. I'm not that worried about Allen Robinson opposite Cooper Kupp because we've seen an OBJ, we've seen Robert Woods. If they would have kept Woods and signed OBJ and they had Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp, I might have been worried about a little bit of volume. But I think they're settling back down. Even if they sign OBJ, he's probably not ready at the beginning of the year. Love what Chase, Jefferson, and Lamb are doing. Debo Samuel, I think one of the questions was about passing, but he's shown himself so ingratiated in the rushing game. He had 8 rushing touchdowns last year. I think he can preserve his value. Johnson, the Mitch Trubisky move doesn't bother me terribly because he's probably still the best, receiver there. Juju's gone. I think Claypool is wildly inconsistent. Waddle and Hill, though, could eat into each other's value. It probably would drop for me. I would drop Hill out of my top 10. He was barely in it for me. Some people were a little higher than me. But how do you feel about those receivers, Ricky?
Yeah, so for me, I had Adams number 1. I still think that he's going to be consistent enough. I just think that he's that good. I mean, we're talking double-digit touchdowns, 1,200 yards, 1,300 yards. And for me, I think Adams' value after this past week only went through the roof. I was much higher on Hill than everybody. I see a lot of people. I had him ranked 4th. He would move down my list drastically. He'd still probably be on the cusp of 10, but I think Waddle will move from my 10 to probably the 15 to 20 range, just because I don't think that I can see him producing. Could they both see 1,000 yards? Probably. It's likely. But I could see Waddle getting that 8 to 1,000 yard mark and still repeating. I think Waddle basically repeats the numbers almost that he had this year, and that to me is just not justifiable in a top 10. I don't think it is. I think a lot more people are higher on Chase than I am. I need to. It's not that I don't like Chase. I love Chase. I just need to see more of Chase. I need Chase to follow it up like Jefferson did. You know what I mean? Jefferson followed up his season with another great season. So I'm huge on Debo. I have him 3rd overall. I like the dual threat capability. I don't think that changes at all. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is back there. He's still going to eat no matter what's going to go on. And I agree with you. I think Allen Robinson raises Cooper Kupp stock a little bit because Allen Robinson, I think people forget how good Allen Robinson actually really is because he's been stuck in the hells of quarterbacks over the last couple of years. I like Allen Robinson. I think that he's going to be probably a solid, wide receiver too. You know what I mean? I think he could. I don't know if he's going to be consistent enough weekly, but I think he's an easy, 4 or 5 for 50 weekly type of guy that's going to really, and then it can surprise you from here and there. I'm not as big on AJ Brown as everybody else is. I don't know what that is. He's in my top 10, but for me, I like the consensus top 10. A lot of the guys that I have are in this list. The one guy that didn't make the list was Stephon Diggs, which I'm a big Stephon Diggs guy. I think that he's somebody, in my opinion, that should be in that top 10. But I could see why maybe some people left him off. I think maybe if we redid this list now, I think he'd be in that 12 range. I think just because I think that he is that good, and with Waddle shifting the way Waddle's shifting, Adams I think should be higher. But it's a solid list. It's a solid list that I think you could really go off of because Lamb and Chase, I like Lamb a lot. I think Lamb is incredible. And honestly, who else are they going to throw it to the ball to in Dallas? So. But
yeah, so if there was one guy that isn't in here that you would bump in, who would it be for you?
Obviously, it definitely would be Diggs. I'm a big Diggs guy. But outside of Diggs, probably Keenan Allen.
Yeah,
I like Keenan Allen. I think that he doesn't get enough credit. He did have another incredible year. He's just consistent. I'd like to see his touchdowns go up a little bit more. Obviously, he's on the back half of his career as well. That's another thing that we can look at. But we can say that, but we're talking about a guy that's got 100-plus catches in 5 of 6 seasons. And one of those seasons, he had 97 catches, so it's not like he was a slouch. 1,000 in every single one of them, except for one. He was 8 yards short. 6+ touchdowns in every year since then. I'm a little bit lighter on Mike Williams. I don't love him. And maybe if it wasn't for the injury, I think Godwin would be another guy that I would like to see in that top tier. The injury scares me.
That and they always have so much competition. So there's two of the guys that I was thinking. Diggs and Allen are guys that I have appreciated, but Godwin is one that I think he's top 10 talent, but you don't always know the situation. And this year in particular, with where he tore his ACL. The one that I've always wanted to see be able to vault up is Terry McLaurin. I love his talent, his situation. Just they're not
like Allen Robinson.
Well,
like Allen Robinson.
Yeah, and I thought last year when he was going to get Ryan Fitzpatrick that maybe we'd finally get to see, Fitzpatrick, a guy that's more vertical. I'll be curious. Carson Wentz wasn't terrible for Michael Pittman, and I think Terry McLaurin's a better receiver, but it just –
Yeah, I mean, Michael Pittman had 88 for 10,000 or for 1,082 yards and 6 touchdowns. You know what I mean? So, and to be honest with you, Michael Pittman was also the really only other weapon that offense had that wasn't from the backfield. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if you look at the separation from Pittman to Pascal – you go from 1,082 yards to 384 yards. You know what I mean? That's a massive difference. When your third leading receiver is Jonathan Taylor, you know what I mean? That's something to look at. I think that I agree with you. I agree with you 100% there. I think Pittman's another
Jonathan
guy.
Taylor might be their wide receiver too this year.
He might be. I think Pittman's another guy that I like a lot. That's not on. He's not top 10. He's not top. I'm not gonna say he's ever top 10, but I do think that he doesn't get enough credit in the fantasy circles just because obviously he's the only weapon. But I think they're gonna bring somebody in. They're gonna have to bring somebody in there. But
the one that probably took the biggest hit lately is DK Metcalf because I think he had consensus top 10 talent, but his situation right now has really, really gone down.
Yeah, it's a perfect segue here for some realization for this position, which I think it's just as pitiful as it can be as it is every year. It's very top heavy. Intrigued by these results, and that's the tight end position. The consensus top 10 looked like this. We had Kyle Pitts at number 1, Mark Andrews 2, Hawkinson at 3, Kittle at 4, Kelsey 5, Waller 6, Goddard 7, Pat Freiermuth 8, Dawson Knox 9, and Dalton Schultz at number 10. And
one of us can't spell, and it's me.
Oh, it's definitely me too. I screwed up. I thought it was funny. It said Dallas Schultz, which it's possible because him and CeeDee Lamb are the only guys that are going to catch balls all year. I mean, I'll tell you what. If Schultz stays healthy, he's going to have an incredible season. It's possible that he can.
He looks like old school Jason Witten last year, which maybe is what they like.
Overall, solid top to bottom. For me, I'm not as high on Hawkinson as everybody else is, which I don't really hate Hawkinson. I love Mark Andrews. I'm a big Mark Andrews guy. Kelsey, to me, I was happy I had him slotted at my number 2 spot, but I feel like he's even higher than number 2 spot. I feel like he is that 2 spot. I mean, we're looking probably 2 or 3 more years out of him. So if we're drafting right now, if I get 2 or 3 years out of Travis Kelsey, with him getting fed a lot more touchdowns, I think that him and Hill counterbalance each other a lot. Maybe he sees a lot more double teams, and maybe that opens up some the other players. Or maybe they draft a guy that's super fast that gets him open. But Kelsey's going to eat regardless. But solid top 10. Freiermuth is a guy that I really love. I love Simi Freiermuth. So I think he's one guy that I would definitely be targeting in drafts if I've got the opportunity to, because he's got a massive upside in an offense that, I mean, maybe Trubisky, it is what it is. But I love Freiermuth. He catches touchdowns. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was the only one. Kyle Pitts got 3 first place votes. I was the only one that didn't give him a first place vote. He was actually tight end 3 for me, not because I don't like the talent, but his situation is trash. Last year, he only got a single touchdown. If he wasn't as good as he is, he probably wouldn't have gotten 68 receptions and over 1,000 yards. But they have probably worse receivers currently at the current moment. Could they spend their top 10 pick on a wide receiver? Could they spend other picks on wide receivers? They certainly could. We know Calvin Ridley's not walking through that door right now. Wide receiver 1 is Olamide Zaccheaus, and their probably number 2 is Frank Darby. If I'm a defense, I have 27 guys covering Kyle Pitts because he's the only one that, they don't have this incredibly powerful running game. They have the wishbone option of Cordero Patterson, Mike Davis, and Damian Williams back there. So I don't know what Atlanta's doing on offense. I don't think their offense is going to be great. Maybe garbage time helps Kyle Pitts. I just think Atlanta could be 3 or 4 years away from relevance because they're going to we haven't seen them bottom out yet in terms of salary cap and everything else. And then, how long does Kyle Pitts get held back? That would be sort of my trepidation about TJ Hawkinson too, except for Jared Goff, whatever we may think of him, is a little bit better of a quarterback than what Atlanta has currently. And their offense is a little more up tempo. For me, it was Mark Andrews was my first place vote. I love what he's doing. I think he is going to continue to be a big powerhouse in the passing game for the Ravens. The Ravens are trying to pass more. Lamar did actually pass more in the time that he was in there. Huntley did as well. I like the talent. I like Kelsey's talent. I had him a little bit further back because I think he's getting older, and we saw a little bit more boom bust because of the way teams have adjusted to playing Kansas City in that offense. And I also wonder if Kelsey ends up getting hurt a little bit by the fact, MVS maybe takes the top off the defense, but he doesn't scare people the same way Tyreek Hill did. Other than that, I don't know. I like Juju Smith-Schuster, but I feel like he's more of a possession receiver. So who is stretching out the defense and what they don't have that kind of power running game that keeps the defense honest either. So those are questions. Darren Waller is another guy. I've loved the talent, but they have loaded up on weapons recently. So I think that that's going to cut into his volume. Signing Adams probably hurt his volume more than a guy like Hunter Renfrow. But, I would agree with you. The tight end position is interesting, except for I think we have a deeper pool of guys. I wouldn't be sad if they were my tight end than we have in years past. It felt like even as recently as last year, if you didn't get Kelsey or Kittle or Andrews, you were probably screwed. This year, it feels like there's any of the guys in this top 10, if they were my tight end, I'd feel pretty good rolling with. And the way you could have built Dynasty over the last few years, I have 2 or 3 of these guys on a couple of my teams, and it makes me feel really good. Plus, you throw in guys like, I was a big Alberto fan as a Denver, and now it appears like he's going to have a chance to be tight end 1 in that offense. So those futures have matured. A guy like Cole Kmet, if the Bears can pass better, does he end up getting more opportunities? The one that I think probably takes the biggest hit in the tight end group for me was Noah Fant. I used to have him as a top 10 option. I really dropped him out based on situation. I have no idea what they're doing. He was a guy that got a few votes, from some of our panelists, but he's one that I dropped out. The other one that I'm watching is Dawson Knox. I like the way that he matured up, and if he continues on that trajectory, I think he's solidly in the top 10, but he's the one for me in this group that has the most volatility to really disappoint. They did sign OJ Howard. I'm not big on OJ Howard, but he exists. And, they have so many weapons and options. If you look at Knox, a lot of what kept him up in a high scoring range was touchdowns. And if he doesn't get those goal line looks, that's what separates him from some of the other guys in this group, which also had receptions and yards and some big plays.
Yeah, OJ Howard signing kind of scares me a little bit. I don't think we've seen the potential out of OJ Howard that I think is there. But also he could just be a steaming pile of crap. So it's it's either way. I don't disagree with you. I think there's a solid 15 tight ends that you can really kind of look at this offseason that you're not wrong. It's really just either you're drafting a tight end early or you're drafting 2 later that you hope that you start the right week. You know what I mean? Like that to me is what what we're shooting for here. All right. With that being said, folks, thank you guys so much for listening to the the fantasy football portion of the show. We're going to slowly transition into the movie corner here, where we talk about some movies that we recently watched, maybe some TV shows, et cetera, et cetera. This weekend's slate not as busy as prior weeks have been. It is definitely Oscar season.
It's like all the streaming services forgot to release a movie this week, because last week every streaming service had an original film, and this week none of them do.
Yeah, so we have a couple of we obviously have The Lost City dropping in theaters, which I saw. I really enjoyed it. It's not a great movie by any means, but it's a fun little movie. Infinite Storm came out this weekend. I really liked it. I think it's a pretty solid movie. It released in limited theaters, and I think it's out on VOD as well. If for any reason you're looking to try to catch up on any of the Best Picture movies or any of the Oscar movies heading into this weekend, you can watch Belfast, or it's either for rent or purchase. Coda is on on Apple TV Plus. Don't Look Up is exclusively on Netflix. Drive My Car is on HBO Max, as well as you can purchase or rent it. Dune is available on HBO Max as well as rent or purchase. King Richard is available on HBO Max as well as for rent or purchase. Licorice Pizza is available for rent or purchase. Nightmare Alley is available on Hulu, HBO Max, or for rent or purchase. Power Dog is exclusively on Netflix. And West Side Story is available on HBO Max, Disney Plus, or for rent or purchase as well. So you got the Oscars kicking off this weekend. We had a few movies that hit the Banana Meter last week. Make sure to check out thebananameter.com for all of those details. But we had X, Cheaper by the Dozen, and Deep Water hit the Banana Meter last weekend. And
I call Deep Water a study of snails.
Yes, it's a beautiful film. But my one that I think people should check out is Windfall. It's not going to be for everybody. It's definitely not going to be for everybody. It's definitely a slow burn. I really enjoyed it just because it was different and unique from what we're used to seeing, I think, or what we've been really seeing lately. I quite liked it a lot. I quite liked the cast. Jason Segel, Jesse Plemons, and Lily Collins. They have a great little dynamic there. So if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix. Check it out there. What about you, Fox? What you got?
Yeah, I enjoyed Windfall as well. I thought it had a very strong Coen Brothers vibe. I loved the score that they put in it, and a lot of the shots, the way they used their location was really good. I think HBO Max has had a quietly strong week the last couple of weeks with their original programming. They released a adaptation of a DC property called DMZ, which is a 4-hour miniseries starring Rosario Dawson and Benjamin Bratt. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. It's set in an alternate timeline where a second civil war has broken out, and New York City is a demilitarized zone that kind of has its own government and things going on. Rosario Dawson is a nurse who sneaks back in there to try to find her son. I thought that was really compelling. They also released an original series, Minx, which is set in the 70s about trying to make a women's magazine with some male centerfolds. If you don't want to see penises, that's not the show for you, because the first episode probably has 30 or 40 different penises. I'm not prepared for that, but I love Jake Johnson and Ophelia Lovibond, the two leads. I think that they have a great chemistry. They're very funny. 2 episodes released last week. 2 episodes are out again this week. I've seen all 4. Really enjoying that, but I'll be curious. So I know you're doing live show on Sunday night, but who are you picking for Best Picture?
All right, so real quick, Minx is really good. I've really enjoyed it. I've actually seen episode 5 and 6. And it's really good. It's really, really, really good. It's gotten even better. I think each episode gets better. Jake Johnson is incredible in this. And I think that as he has a moment in episode 5 or 6 that's really like, damn, that was good. Like, damn, he's a good actor. I actually have the rest of the series to watch, and I'm kind of excited to dive into that because.
And we have a new writer on the site who's doing weekly recaps. If you want to catch up, I recommend going to check that out.
Yeah, Tina, she's jumped on board. She's doing weekly recaps of that and of The Dropout, which I'm waiting to watch The Dropout until it's completely done, just because I don't love watching shows weekly. It annoys me. So.
Amanda Seyfried's accent in that, potentially accurate, was too much for me.
With that being said, I am. We did a big show last night. Kenzie and I did a big final prediction show of all 23 categories. Make sure to check that out here on the YouTube channel. You can check it on the Music City Drive-In. We do have a big announcement coming very soon about the Music City Drive-In podcast, but we'll deal with that on a different day. But I have Power of the Dog winning Best Picture. I do. I have Power of the Dog really having a strong night. I think that Coda's best chance at winning any Oscar is going to be Troy Kotsur. I'm not predicting it anymore. I think Coda is going to go 0 for 3, but I'm going to leave my personal preference of Coda and comments about Coda to myself. It is a very heartwarming film. It's an okay film. It's not a well-made film. It's not a Best Picture film. Compared to previous year Best Picture film, sure, you want to say, but it's not. To me, Best Picture means it's well-made. It's got a great story. It's got all of the things that factor into that. And if we're going to talk about that type of thing, in my opinion, King Richard is the movie that should reign supreme. If you're talking about a complete package of a film, I still think King Richard should win Best Picture of the films that are nominated, just because it has every aspect of a film that I love. It's not the best movie I saw last year, but it's well acted. It's got incredible editing. I love the screenplay, and it's got a great score, and it's an incredible story about two of the most powerful women in sports. I love King Richard. I really do. I think it's an incredible film that's not getting nearly enough credit as it probably should. But I have Power of the Dog winning. I don't hate it winning. It's Power of the Dog was not my cup of tea. I didn't love it, but it's technically well made. And I think Dune will probably walk away with the most Oscars for the night, and they'll probably all be below the line. They'll probably win production design, score, sound, stuff like that. But I do think Power of the Dog is going to pick up a few more than people are giving it credit for this weekend. So it'll be interesting. We're going to be doing a live show. I'm intrigued by it. They're presenting 8 of the awards pre-show, which could really, really dictate the show ahead of time. It could be a little bit of a surprise on some factors, because if certain categories go a certain way leading up to the show, the live show, it could be really – we could either this is going to be a very boring night, or holy shit, everything's gone crazy. Because I think right now the most competitive conversation is surrounding the Best Actress, and I think all 5 actresses have an opportunity to win on Sunday. And it's been a very long time we have that predominant of a category that is that wide open, and I'm excited for it. But outside of that, a lot of these categories are cut and dry, especially the big ones. The director's already sewn up. Supporting actress is sewn up. Supporting actors between 2 people, in my opinion. Maybe co-star is at that 75-80% lock. Best actors locked. Will Smith's winning hands down, which I'm excited to see, because Will Smith getting that Oscar is cool in itself. But I'm excited for the Oscars. I really am. I'm ready for the season to be over so that we can move on to next season. I'm one of those crazy people. I'm already looking ahead. I'm already waiting for Babylon to be nominated for 12 Oscars, just because, Damien Chazelle's back, baby. Let's go. But
it feels like, because of the delays and stuff last year, the Oscars has been almost a year-long process. I think that's why
it's been almost 8 months. I mean, it's.
I think that's why people are getting a little burned out.
September is whenever you fully kick into gear, and we're in March. It's crazy.
I liked all of the films that were nominated for Best Picture. I know you have your qualms with one of them, and it's definitely. I think if that wins script, which it has in some places, there's going to be a healthy debate about some of those issues, because it's not even just the primary issue that bothers you. The casual racism is really hard to overlook in the Licorice Pizza script. I actually have gone the other way and don't think it's going to win anything. Maybe because of that. I almost feel about King Richard the same way you feel about Coda, which is ironic. Like, I think it's fine. I didn't love it as much as some other people. On the flip side, maybe it's the fan in me, but I finished my picks because we have to get them over to Jacob. I am going all in on Coda winning Best Picture. The universe owes it to me.
I just don't see it happening. It doesn't have any,
except for that it's won some of these Guild Awards, and those are the people that vote.
Yeah, but the problem is, at the end of the day, it has to be on that preferential ballot, and I don't think that it's going to be on enough people's ballot in order for it to win. How they do the preferential ballot is definitely different and definitely unique from any other process. And for it to win Best Picture, and it didn't even get a song nomination, which was incredibly surprising. I don't even. There's no.
It's best music, though. Wouldn't be considered original songs.
Yeah, there's the original song. There is an original song in the movie that didn't get nominated. That one song is an original song. It was surprised me the original song didn't get nominated. I honestly wouldn't have nominated in any other below the line category because it's not. That's just my opinion. I don't think it's that well made of a movie. I think if that movie gets dropped on Netflix on a Friday, then people will be like, oh, that's a cool movie, and we move on with our lives. It does have a lot of momentum. I am happy. I think Troy Kotsar, if he does win, it'll be inspirational. It'll probably be the best speech of the night. It'll probably have everybody in tears and stuff like that. I'm also looking forward to Will Smith's speech because I think that's another speech that could be very, 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 very good. But Oscars, they've done worse things to us. We could hear Jesse Plemons win for Best Supporting Actor. I don't even know. Like it's crazier things have happened, and I'm excited for the Oscars because after Sunday, that means the Oscars are over. So that's also fun for me. So I'm tired of talking about some of these movies. And what killed me the most, I think, with the supporting category is I don't like any of the performances. I don't think any of them are Oscar worthy. So, supporting actor. Oh. No, supporting actor, hell no. Like, I don't think there's not a single performance in the supporting actor category I would have nominated myself. And that's the reason why I think that I have the biggest deter away from some of these categories because lead actor, I really enjoyed a lot of those performances except for Javier Bardem, which is a joke that he's even in that category. Bradley Cooper 100% should have been there. Yes. Supporting actor, I mean, you had so many different people that really should have been in that category. I mean, top to bottom, Coleman Domingo for Zola. You had Jason Isaacs from Mass. And supporting actress,
Mass.
Ariana DeBose is going to win the Oscar, but Ingenue Ellis should easily win that.
Honestly, don't watch the Best Picture nominees. If you have plenty of time, go fucking find Mass this week.
It's coming out on Hulu tomorrow, I think it is.
Oh, well, and I mean, you can rent by. It's been very cheap to get. The rollout for that movie was depressing because it should have had potentially four actors, at least three, and writing. It should have been a Best Picture. It's very depressing.
Absolutely. That's why the North American Film Critic Association is the best out there. And I just checked. It is tomorrow that you can watch Mass on Hulu. So watch it. But with that being said, I am out of here. Follow Matthew Fox on Twitter at Nighthawk7734. Follow myself at Ricky Blair _. Make sure to check out the Music City Drive-In for all the latest articles, reviews, all that good stuff. And we will talk to you guys next week. Hey,